When I left Christianity and fundamentalist churches, I realized that churches choose married men to lead congregations. So, previous videos, we've talked about how the church does not bestow as much social interest in singleness compared to marriage. We talked about how the church is led by married men and women, and that being single is seen as a temporary life experience and not a long-term, profitable, and desired occupation. But why does the church choose married men to lead the congregation? Well, stereotypically, in church, married people are seen as mature adults. And single people, they're usually put at the children's table. That's a joke about holidays. And it just shows how if you're single after 21, you're seen as lower class. And if you look at a lot of the rules that govern being an elder, deacon, and pastor, it usually states that a man who's married and has children are the most likely to be selected for roles in church. Churches prefer married men because the idea is that they're less vulnerable to sexual temptation because they have a wife. Now, I know that this is a bunch of hooey because I've seen a lot of married men who just don't have self-control. Single men have a hard time getting pastoralships. It's hard for somebody who remains single after 5 to 8 years after they graduate from seminary. It's really hard to be selected by a church to be ordained. And this isn't just something you see in the United States. It's rampant everywhere. I've heard people in South America and even Europe have this problem. The traditional leader in church is a married man of senior or middle age distinction. And women who are single are always treated worse than single men. Once you get into mid-30s, if you've never dated or have been married, you're a social pariah, even in church communities. Young men are pressed very early in life to pursue a partner and a wife. It's not just presented as normal, it's a responsibility. Find a wife and have kids. Young men who are not interested in becoming the social role model for heterosexual men face a lot of social challenges which can eat away at their self-esteem. They get accused regularly of being gay or in the closet, such as people who resemble incels constantly have their masculinity questioned. And people who seem to gravitate to power positions in church just aren't single men. Young men who are socially active in their church and fulfilling the role of a proper young man, a married man, are more likely to be targeted for mentorships and encouraged to become pastors. The church wants someone reliable and respectable, so they are going to go with the guy that is married because a majority of the congregation is married. There's a expectation and an image of respectability if you are married in a heterosexual union. That's the way it's always been. And hopefully someday people realize it's a bunch of a poppycock. And there's just something about married men that make people comfortable. Even though that group of people is the most likely to do really bad things. And even girls, they're taught to choose a boyfriend or future husband. The mountain of purity expectations that are put on girls teach a mantra starting the moment they're born. You must be a good wife and mother. It's not, you must be an equal partner. You should support your two-income household. It's, you must become a good wife and a mother. That leaves a lot of men out in the cold because the working class girls are not looking for working class boys. Even if a young man is willing to work extra hard in life, many women don't want the stress that comes with that at the end of the day. It's a problem because young men don't want the ugly girls or the independent girls who are more likely to want their own careers. And because these girls aren't their pool of possible choices, I hear a lot of young men complaining there's just not enough women to date when clearly there are. They're just not the empty-headed, wife-hunting kind of women. Because the more conservative and religious a man is, the less likely he's going to want an equal partner who has secondary education, an ongoing career, and a woman who wants to pursue many things, not just being an accessory on a man's arm. And church has always been about the patriarchy. And the patriarchy doesn't thrive if men are single. It thrives when they pair people off. And it's really sad how a lot of people who might make amazing pastors will be overlooked because they don't fit the traditional, I call the boring stereotype of being a religious leader. And I've been to churches of all sizes, some up to 8,000 members or smaller churches under 50 members. And regardless of the size of the church, there's a common theme I've noticed when I look at the leadership of a church. Every person who was in a leadership position, whether they were a pastor or a head of some ministry, they all shared one thing in common. They were married. This phenomenon did not just exist in churches, but the issue exists throughout the body of a church. So for single people, never seeing someone in leadership that's single or divorced is something that can cause anxiety or just being felt like they're left out. And it's really sad because around 98% of most large churches' population are married, especially if you're over the age of 30. And yeah, Christian leaders, married leaders may say there's nothing wrong with being single. But you notice, if they ever become single again, they're not single for very long. Because that's how much they don't like being single. Because in the church, being single is seen as being a loser. And it may not be all churches, but the majority of churches in North America, or even in the world, you are a loser. If you're in the upper 20s and 30s, if you're not married or engaged, or with the intention of becoming engaged within a year, you are considered a loser. And you are more likely to find a diamond on your front lawn than gain a leadership position in the church as a single man. And forget it if you're a single woman. You might as well be dead, because nobody wants a single female in any leadership position, because if you're not under a male patriarchal guardianship such as your father or a husband, you are considered a threat.